Hey, we're back. It's another session. It's going to be the catchphrase, isn't it? It's, hey, we're back. Welcome to this slightly delayed start for the session of Fast and Free portfolios in Adobe Spark. I'm gonna start with an honest admission in that. Whilst preparing for this and in the wider event, I somewhat forgot to prepare for the smaller element, which is my own talk. So this has been fairly rapidly put together. But basically, we all kind of know now whether you're a freelancer or someone looking for roles in instructional design. A portfolio has gone from being it's like a unusual standout piece to, if you haven't got one, you'll really struggle to get your name in front of the right people. Because more and more we are moving from a world where we look at a CV and go, wow, the CV looks impressive, to a world where, as recruiters, and certainly when I'm bringing people into a project, I want to see what you've done. I want to see something that I look at and go, that's different. How did that work? Why did you go for that approach? And when I have conversations with people about this, especially when people are just starting out, one of the biggest things is, but I haven't got many work examples. I don't have any experience building a website. I've tried, but it's clunky and it almost looks worse than not having one. Or I haven't got the money to set up a website at the moment, and the free options aren't doing what I want. And recently, there's been a lot of talk about use Rise. Rise is a great tool for that. And it is. They look great. It's great if you can't do a website. Rise can be really, really great. Except Rise, of course, is still part of the Articulate package. So it's not exactly what you would call a cheap option. Great value for the Articulate package, but not cheap. Definitely not cheap. And there's a tool that Adobe offer, who are not known for great value for money, let's be honest, but they actually offer Adobe Spark with a free license. It's a somewhat downgraded version of the tool, but actually it has more or less everything you're likely to need. And this is the tool that I've started to saying to people, well, look, if you're, if you want to create something just to share a piece of work, and you haven't got a website, or you aren't ready for a website, or you haven't got Rise, give Spark a go. So I thought it would be nice just to take a little look at the tool and maybe answer any questions or have a bit of a discussion around portfolios and what should go in and what shouldn't. Helen, they're coming in with use Evolve. I couldn't agree more. Fantastic tool. Evolve, I think, has some fantastic functionality that you could do with this, and has a really, really great price as well. I know Helen's going to talk a lot about Evolve later on, so I shan't steal any thunder there. But please do just chuck questions in, or whether you're on YouTube or here in Airmeet, chuck questions in, and I'll answer them as we go along. But other than that, what I figured we'd do is just jump straight into Spark and really get to grips with it. So let me bring that up and share my screen. There we go. So let's have a look at Spark. So Spark's one of those interesting tools that can do a lot of weird stuff, from Instagram posts and Facebook videos to miniature web pages, all sorts of stuff. It's got pre-built templates, or you can build from scratch. As I said, this is there's a free version and there's a paid version. The paid version will be included if you are a Creative Cloud member, which I know a lot of us are. But in the meantime, let's take a look at just the normal free version. Now, I will sort of start this off before we start looking at building anything in it to say it is far simpler. And if you want more basic than Rise, Evolve, or obviously a website. This is really designed for, look, I've got this piece of work that I want to showcase, but I don't have access to Rise. I don't currently have an Evolve license, and I'm not really at a place where I want to build a website. I have no background in doing web design. I'm not comfortable with it, and I don't want the expense right now. That's all cool. So Spark is that where I tend to use it. So let's start with the idea that you've got, your logo, a piece of work you want to share. So let's come over here and we're going to create something from scratch. And that all starts with creating a brand. So one of the slightly weird things to get used to in Spark is that you don't just say, right, I want this and I want it to be that color as you're building. You create a brand, and from that, it automatically draws out like your themes and your colors. So let's go over to here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a brand. And it's asking us to upload a logo. So if we go here and then there, what I've done here is just created some really quick mock-up logos. So you guys can't actually see the pop-ups as they come up there, can you? Because this is not in the browser window itself. Let me change that. There we are. Share that. Oh, maybe not. Okay. I can't just share the screen as is because AirMeet is open. That's fine. We will... we'll just share that again. There we are. We'll just do that. But anyway, as I've clicked that, what I've done is I've created the logo in a couple of different formats with solid fills and line versions and in two colors, one the brand color and one just in white. It's always handy to have a white version of your logo. And I created those in Illustrator earlier on. So let's just load the logo up. So there we are. You can see here, I've just pulled this straight out of a stock file, so it's nothing special. And it's then asking me to pick a color. Immediately, it's pulled the color from the logo. So in this instance, we're just going to take that. And then it's asking me to choose what kind of font I want to use. So it's got some fairly bog standard fonts here, branded between natural, loud, clean, a couple of different options, or the option to add your own fonts. Then you can add whatever you want. I'm not a massive font buff other than knowing what I do and don't like in that moment. So let's have, I quite like Proxima Nova, so let's have Proxima Nova Black. There we are. So you can see here it's creating some basic ideas of what some designs and layouts might look like. But let's move on. We're going to give this a name, and just so I remember to delete it after the fact, I'll give it something I'm not going to think is real. Creative idea. There we go. Create brand. But what it does next is actually a little bit beyond the information that we've put in. It's going to use a couple of the other Adobe places to start thinking about the overall color palette. So if anyone's used Adobe Color, you'll know it's great for inputting a single color and then getting a whole set of things at the end. Here we can see it's done exactly that. If I have a set color palette, I can quickly go to more colors and add stuff in. For this, we'll just leave it as this being the color palette. We can also see here that it's broken out our logo into also having a tag, which is just the name of our brand. And here we can also add more logos. So what I'm going to do is just add in the other ones that I've created. So let's have the solid fill white version. And let's add the color line version and the white line version. Generally speaking, those that whenever I'm working with a logo, those are the versions that I tend to want: a full color, a color line, a full white, and a white line. That's just personal preference for me, but they are especially handy when you're working in Spark. You can see as well that based on the heading font that we selected earlier, it's also selected a matching body font. For this case, it's just still Proxima Nova with Proxima Nova Black as the heading. But again, you can add more fonts. You can change this if there are specific things you want or need. And what it's also done is it's created 3 standard themes for us, a light, medium, and a dark theme. And these are what we'll be able to use when we're building our kind of portfolio page or case study page. You can add more in here where you can select the colors and font sizes and things like that. But generally speaking, for this, I'll use these. You can edit them if you just click in there. There you are. Here you can kind of see how different things might look. It's also a fairly good example of what it looks like to go through a Spark page. These are just real nice, simple interactions, but great ways of displaying simple information. And you can see that now this is what the medium theme would look like when applied. So you can see you've got these background color sections. You can see what the font and color types look. So let's say, yeah, we're happy with the medium theme. Let's not edit that. So we've now got our brand ready to go. We can see that here we can change how our header and footer are going to look before we create our page. So here it's automatically defaulted to the full color fill. But given that the bottom section is, sorry, this is at the top. I'm looking at the footer. Let's change those around there. When it comes to the logo on the black, I actually think a white line version would look better, so I can change that there. I can add call to actions at the bottom here. So that might be giving me an email address or getting a quote. So you know what, let's put a button in actually, and let's say get in touch. And what I might have done is, I think that looks better round, and we'll match that up to our logo so that that's just white line. That looks quite nice there. There, I might put like an email to link. I shan't put that here because I don't want to create it for real. We can add social badges. So let's just add Facebook and Twitter and an Instagram for those of you cool enough to have an Instagram. That does not include me. And then we can have a look at the background and we can change the color of this. I actually quite like it as black on white. I think it provides quite a stark end to the piece. So let's leave that as is. That's all good then. Let's go back and have a look at the header. So at the header, it's really just a choice of whether you want the logo or the ident. On this case, I think I'm actually going to go with the ident. I quite like that, but we can come back and change this later on if we decide we're not keen. So with that done, let's head on over and create the page. So if we click the big plus at the top, it'll ask us what we want to create. From templates is not available in the free version, but the rest of this will be here. So we can create flyers, Instagram posts and stories, Facebook posts, collages, web pages, videos, branded graphics, or a custom size graphic. So you can see here how flexible this tool is. That's one of the big benefits to me is once you've created something in this, you can very quickly then go, right, well, I now want to turn my portfolio or an element of my portfolio into a social media post. You can do that very quickly using Spark. I now want to turn it into a video. Well, you can do that as well. It allows you to keep that one solid brand and the assets you creating one thing and use them across many elements. So especially when you're starting out, that saves you a lot of time and a lot of money. For this, we're going to look at web page. So immediately it's loaded up into the editor. You can see it's a full graphic editor. So you see exactly what you're creating as you go. You can present or share it from here or preview it. So let's start by coming over to the top right and selecting a theme. I just need to switch the brand over to this one that we just created. There we are. And when we were looking, we I quite liked the medium theme. So I'm going to select that. So, as I said, for the purpose of this this kind of quick look, really, at the tool, I'm going to assume you have a work example you want to share. For this, I've just grabbed some quick mock slides that we can use. So I'm just going to call this a mock case study. Privacy question: can you control the viewers in an educational setting? When you say control the viewers, what do you mean? As in, like, who is able to see it? Ah, cool. Yes. So to an extent, yes. In that, when you publish it, you're not publishing it to the sort of publicly accessible web. You create like a link that you can send people. So when we do the invite, for instance, we can say, okay, only people with edit access. So that would be an invite to edit. So when it comes around to sharing, it would really be anyone who has the link has access. So that would be your way of controlling it. So if, for instance, yeah, that would be the only way. If, for instance, you were concerned that they might give the link to someone else and they would be able to view it, it may not be the right tool. However, I tend to find that, you know, I've used this as well as using it for sort of like quick case studies and portfolio pieces. It's a really good tool for quick, simple learning design when you don't need to have a, you know, Scorm compliant piece and you just want to quickly, you know, send a link out saying, look, I built this in 20 minutes. It's just got a few quick points you need to be aware of. Or it's a simple visual editor, especially for those of us who maybe have little or no budget. And it's very popular in the Adobe Creative Classroom courses to get people to use Spark rather than creating just another PowerPoint and sharing that with people. So it's really good, but yeah, you don't get like a password protected version or anything like that. So that is a consideration. Anyway, so we've got this here. I've put a title in. We've got a a subtitle if we want it. I'm going to leave that blank for now. Although what I quite like to do is with the mock case study being like the name of the piece, and then the subtitle can be a really good place to have a real quick sort of explanation as to what the project was. So a digital replacement for a 2-hour ILT workshop. And you can see why I don't tend to type directly into authoring tools because my spelling is pretty horrific. But we know we're just looking at a basic example. Top tip number 1: do proof your work before sending it to a prospective employer. Do not send them this; it will not go well. What you can then do is click the photo button to add a big background here. So let's quickly add in a background. Did say I failed to prepare properly. I'm being a terrible host of my own session. Let's have a look and maybe go to the Evolve folder. That's a bit busy, really, but I at least know it's big enough to not look ridiculous. Let's see what that looks like when it loads up. There we go. So ideally, don't have other text on your background image, but I at least knew that image was not so small that it wouldn't get all pixelated. So that gives you quite a nice top banner. This is a good space to impress. If you can make this top section look great, you'll be off to a good start. And this is why I quite like why I mentioned dragons in the storytelling section. This was for a long time Evolve sort of catchphrase: is learning should be as exciting as facing down a dragon, if a little less dangerous. So spot the D&D nerd at the event. So let's think about the next thing we're going to want to put into our case study or portfolio. Here you can see we've got loads of options. So we can add photos, text, buttons, videos, photo grids, glide shows, which are my personal favorite for displaying bits and bobs, and split layouts. So to start, I always quite like just having some nice centralized heading text, just to talk about what the challenge was, or the challenge, I should say. Challenge, and then add in maybe a little bit more text that's center again, but is just your body text. So here we might just have a bit of lorem ipsum. Can't even spell that today. There we go. Let's go to a lorem ipsum generator. In fact, let's just get some information about lorem ipsum rather than generating some. That'll officially make it different. There we are. We didn't want quite that much, I don't think. There we go. But you can start to see how straight away it just looks tidy. It looks clean. It's simple. Now let's add something else in. From here, we might want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of approaches to learning. So let's do a split where we can put a nice image on one side. Let's go with something non-related to my business background. IDTX slides. So these are just some real quick slides that I pulled off the Tinterweb. So you might have a nice picture there that actually fits. And then over here, rather than saying, oh, well, you've just got text in your split menu, you can actually use photos, text, buttons, or video. So it still gives you more options around interactivity. So maybe we've got initially some text, which might be my approach. And when talking about your approach, it's really important that this is not just a kind of isn't instructional design amazing kind of post. It needs to be kind of really practical, talking about why you made the decisions that you made in designing this piece. We often think with portfolios, it's all about just creating something that makes people go, wow, how did you build that? And don't get me wrong, that's great. That helps. But actually, I want to know why what you're showing me was the solution to the challenge, because that's what I'm asking you to do when you come and work for me. I'm not asking you to create the coolest thing, the hippest thing, the newest thing. Use of the word hip means I'm never going to be part of that group. But what I want to see is you turn around and say, this was the best way to deliver on what people needed, not just a cool thing to build. I can see there we've got this is a really good point. In our org, we often use Microsoft Sway if we need to control who uses it. Microsoft Sway is an awesome tool. Love Sway. I found Sway after I used Spark, which is the only reason I tend to default to Spark. But Sway is a somewhat similar tool in some ways. I'd say it actually has more functionality in it. The challenge being your org or you will need Office 365. But I do agree, in-house, if you have it anyway, phenomenal tool and really good control over who can access it. So certainly in a school environment, actually an educational environment, which probably does have Office licenses, excellent tool for that. So we've got some text in here talking about the approach. Equally, what you could do is pop in a video. Pop a video in your piece talking about your approach. It's you. It's all about you anyway. So pop a video in. You can link to YouTube, Vimeo, or Spark Video. Spark has its own video sort of system, which we won't look at today, but is really, really great. So let's say we could put a video in there. I won't here. But what you might want to do when you're talking about your approach is also maybe include a button to your profiles or something like that. But for now, let's assume you're just having a picture here and some text there. And then we're going to want to talk about the solution itself. We're going to want to start showing those kind of impressive pictures, those things that we really like to show off. And for me, really, here, there are two tools that do that very well: the photo grid and the glide show. Now, the glide show is my personal preference, but it requires a little bit of work to get it to look good. So let's create that. When you go into glide show, it's going to ask you to upload all your background images first. So for that, I'm just going to select a couple of vaguely interesting looking slides. So it's not just the same old stuff. Let's go with that one and open those up. So it brings them in here and we can have a look at them. Yeah, they all look a little bit interesting. Imagine these are interactive slides as opposed to just stills, and then click save. So what's happened now, we've got our challenge section that we already had in place. We've got our approach section. And then what we've got is this glide show. And you can see what happens as you scroll down through the glide show. The image gets zoomed in a little bit. And then this little box here arrives. And we can move this around. We can have it in the center. We can have it on this side. And then when we click into it, we can add text, some photos, buttons, and videos. So here we might be talking a little bit about the course setup, and we might have some text in there. Just talking, you know what, let me correct the mistake rather than keep making it. Copy that. You might have some text there. I quite like that left aligned, actually. I might leave that left aligned. Then we go down to the next one. And here we might be talking about something completely different. Let's say we're talking about the visual design. And maybe for that, we're going to include text again. But you could see there as well, we could also include some buttons that would allow you to go to maybe your Dribble site or social media pages. And you can see here, you can move these around, you can set them differently. So by really setting up these background images, they're a really nice way to step through some clear images and provide some context. You can add videos in as well. That's a nice addition here, to have a little video talking about the slide they're viewing. So we've got the glide path. And then at the bottom, one thing that I do quite like to do, especially if you don't use a glide path, is to add a photo grid. And that really is just kind of your very kind of classic approach to doing this, which might be, there are a bunch of images, save those, and you can see here you can add a caption, but more so what you probably just want to do is pop some text in there, the solution or whatever it might be. This would be an alternative to what we were just looking at. And when users click on them in preview mode, they come up full screen, and then you're able to go through, much like any other photo gallery, with captions attached to each one, maybe explaining what you're doing. Finally, and this is one of the really great things, is because buttons can go anywhere, you can just set up text and buttons to jump straight to a live version of your course. So when we talk about doing live versions of your course, that could be hosted on a review tool, such as Review 360, if you've got the Storyline licenses available to you. It could also, though, be hosted completely free of charge on things like Google Cloud, or AWS, or Microsoft Azure, depending on what tools you have available to you. As long as it's sort of like an accessible web address, you'll be able to link to it from these buttons. So it does still give you the option to link off to interactivity, to link off to social media sites, to examples elsewhere. And using that same functionality, of course, you can then scroll up. You can also link to other Spark pages. So you can almost create a website-esque experience by using the buttons and Spark. Without having to go through the, setting up an SSL certificate is a prime example. If you're going to do a website, make sure that's there, because no one's going to read the portfolio that doesn't have an SSL certificate attached to it, because it's scary to go to those kinds of websites. So yeah, that in a kind of a real, it doesn't look particularly marvelous, but it's all on brand, it all matches, and I haven't had to do any work to make it match. That's one of the nicest things about Spark. We spend a lot of time making our work look great. We don't then want to spend the same amount of time quickly putting together a case study. So what this now allows me to do, I can either present it myself, or show header and footer. I can attach a Google Analytics tracking ID to get more information out of it if I want to. But most importantly, I can share it. I can just publish with a share link, which allows me to then give it an official title, decide do I not want to make it clear who the author is. Do I want to make it featured on the Adobe Spark website? Probably not, if I'm using this for something in-house. What does it relate to? What area? And then I can just create a link. And that's just creating that for me now. There we are. I can share directly onto social media, send it to Google Classroom. Great if you're using this for a content delivery tool as well. I can email it. I can embed it. So if you've got a social media page that still allows embedding of things, great, you can do it there. But if not, I can copy it and I can paste it as I am now into the chat. There we go. And then anyone who wants to can pop that into a URL, and we see it loads up. It automatically gives me a nice loading screen that it's created for me. We can see I've got the stamp at the top, and as I scroll down, I've got that, I've got my text. It's adding in these slight parallax movements. I've not had to program any of that. You've seen it's just been a case of chuck the content in. There it is. Keep scrolling down. Immediately, you try and create these things in a lot of manual authoring tools. You're there for a long time. You've seen exactly how quick this is to do. Here's an example of what that looks like when it's published. Just real simple interactivity. And then right down here at the bottom, I've got my information, my social pages available. People can appreciate. I've never quite worked out what that reports to. It seems to be an Adobe specific thing. But that is how quickly you can build something in Adobe Spark. Again, I've used portfolios and case studies as an example, but there is no reason to not use Adobe Spark to deliver content to people or to create fun things to share on social media about, well, maybe your story or your approach to instructional design or what you've learned at a recent 2-day free community conference. It really is a great tool. It is. And the really useful thing as well, the brand we created in Spark there will now be saved to, if you have an Adobe Cloud license, will be saved as one of your color palettes and brands. So then if you want to load up a color palette into Photoshop, or you want to load a palette up into Illustrator, After Effects, you can immediately pull in that color palette. To make sure your work across multiple Adobe products is all going to line up. Cool. So, does Spark publish Scorm content? No. It would be nice if it did, right? However, what I would also say is I think if it published Scorm content, I can almost guarantee Adobe wouldn't have a free version of it, which I guess is the trade-off. Just it's only a suspicion based on years of watching Adobe not give away products like that for free very often. I would say I guess it depends, because it's got Google Analytics, there's nothing really to stop you being able to use that in terms of general reporting. But I'm guessing because you specifically stated Scorm, you're thinking hosting it on an LMS. Any design tips if you know that the recipient is likely to want to print or save as a PDF? So that's a really interesting point, actually. If I go back, I hope going back works when I jump back from the general internet into the editor. There is, I believe, an option. There we go, look, to print it right from here. So let's do that. And you can see it's kind of okay. It's really not ideal. I would suggest this is not the tool for that. If you think someone is going to, if you think someone's going to want to print your portfolio or download it as a PDF, honestly, I would probably build it in InDesign and I would build it to be used in that way. However, I don't know anyone who does that. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I don't have a universal knowledge of recruitment in the ID world, but broadly, if you're selling your skills as a digital L&D professional, I would much rather see you present me with something with some level of digital interactivity than please download my PDF. Don't get me wrong though, my first 6 or 7 jobs were secured with a PDF. And I have no shame in saying that, because it's the reason that I do think there's this big thing, you must have a website straight away. And the tech geek in me goes, yeah, everyone should have a website, whether it's a portfolio or not, so that you can have things like an internal Plex server and your own servers in your garage and things like this. However, I also appreciate for 99% of people, the idea of having a website seems utterly pointless. And as such, a PDF can do the job. And if a PDF gets you the role that you want, then it was the right tool to use. Same as if Spark does versus a website versus Rise. There is no one right way. I think it's just good to know what options you've got. But yeah, I would design for the way you think or you want them to use it. But certainly I've never sent a Spark page to someone and someone say, could you please send me a PDF version of this? That would be new to me. But again, you may have someone in mind. I like this tool. I'd like to play with it a little and see where I can go. Yeah, absolutely. But I think because there's that free version available, there's kind of no harm in playing with it. You can do there's an unlimited number of Spark pages or posts that you can create. And if you do have an Adobe Cloud license, as I said, you've got the full template included premium version already included in there. I think it's just one of those underused tools within the license. Let me stop sharing my screen. We've only really got a few minutes. In fact, we've got like a minute really. But just has anyone got any general questions about portfolios, case studies? Certainly like anything you're thinking about or trying to decide on about yours at the moment. Yeah, no, Morgan, that's a really great point. Yeah. You could absolutely create a Microsoft form or a Google form and have a button from this go straight to it. A bit like having a contact form, whether that could be a direct email, contact form, yeah, whatever works for you. I keep getting notified there's something in the Q&A channel, but when I click on it, it disappears. Best example to show. Best volume of examples to show. So it's funny. I've always felt volume in terms of portfolios, to me, is less important than the quality of what you're showing. And by that, I don't necessarily mean the quality of the work, although that is fairly important as things go in this. You could say that is the most important thing. But I would suggest that maybe you consider it's better to have one example where you actually go through what was the challenge, what was my approach and process, what was the end result, what were what happened after the fact, what came out at the end of this, as opposed to saying, here's links to 17 amazing things I've developed and no further information, which totally gets sent out there. There's a lot of people with these, sprawling portfolio sites full of amazing things, but no information about why that was a good solution or how they got there. And I think as a recruiter, those are equally, if not more important than whether or not you can create a multi-level Mario themed game in Storyline. Very impressive if you can, but under what circumstances was that the right approach from a learning point of view? You've really got to think about what skill you're trying to sell here. Is your skill just, I can make cool things? Or is your skill, I can make really effective learning experiences? Some of them are really cool. Some of them are an interactive PDF because that's what people needed. So I think there's no absolute right answer in terms of volume. I would say you want to present enough that you can say, yes, this represents me and what I do. So for me, example, I usually, anything more than 4, I tend to stop looking, because if you haven't shown me after 4 examples what you do, then your portfolio is terrible. There you go. Blunt advice. Can I publish one screen Captivate activity and add it into Spark? I'm not the biggest holder of knowledge when it comes to Captivate. There certainly isn't an internal like Adobe workflow like there is between some tools. But I guess I could be wrong, but if it's self-hosted a bit like a Rise course kind of used to be before they changed it around a bit, yes, you could link it in with a button. Alternatively, Spark used to have an iframe, which you could embed things to, but they actually took that away. So I possibly not. It really depends on what the hosting is there, which I don't know enough about to say with any confidence. Should we put developed samples, or would be PPT storyboard be okay? For portfolio, so I think, should we put sort of real examples, or just the pre-development portfolio? It really depends on the situation. Because I should really clarify, creating a portfolio is never an excuse to break an NDA. Which is always the struggle that you sometimes face. I would say you want to present the most complete thing that you can to represent what you've done. So if you can include a link to a working interactive sample, gold standard. But I still then want some images, some stills, and some explanation about the challenge, your approach, and the results. Um, one or the other probably isn't the way to go here. It's more about a combination of them. Because I actually really like seeing people's storyboards as well as the finished result. Because then I can see, what did that process look like? Actually, did you just write words and then someone else create all the graphics and do the development? Or did you do some graphic design? Have you got kind of your initial sketches like Phil was talking about this morning? Have you got your original wireframes? Show me those. I'd love to see, if I'm going to recruit you, I'd love to see as much of your working process as possible. Plus, then, think about the conversation you get to have at interview where you say, oh, so you saw my process. How does that align to yours? You get to ask really intelligent questions based on what you've already shown them. We have run right up to the wire. So thank you all for entertaining me as I kind of waffle on about Adobe Spark and portfolios. I'm going to jump into preparing the next session, which is Camtasia productivity tips. I'm so looking forward to this. We will be back very, very shortly. Thank you all very much.